Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight, I've got 3 bizarre true reports of cryptid encounters to share with you. First off, we have an eyewitness account of a dogman. And next, well, even I don't know what this one was, but it sure sounded terrifying. And then finally, a true Bigfoot encounter story to end the evening. It's going to be a great one. So grab your boots and let's ride to cryptid country. Number 1. Hey biker, about 2 years ago, me and my fiance were heading to my parents' cottage in a little town called Brighton. It's about 100 kilometers east of Oshawa, Ontario. So I'd been building this 95 5-liter Mustang since I was about 15, and I finally pulled it off. And this time, me and my fiance at the time were at the Brighton exit. We made a left. We were probably driving for around 10 minutes, and then something out of the left peripheral of my eye, something was traveling along the road in the forest while we were going about 60 kilometers an hour. And that's when I asked my fiance, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing right now? That something is moving as fast as we're driving." So I work at corrections, provincial corrections, so a lot of things don't really get to me. And I had my 5 double D flashlight in my car. And me being the tough guy I was, I just pulled the Mustang over to the side of the road. Now keep in mind that this was around 1 a.m. because I'd finished a shift and she and I were going out right after work. No lights, no nothing. This thing, when I stopped the car, it stopped too. I walked out of my car and my fiance is telling me to get back in the vehicle. And no more than around 20 feet away from me, there was something standing there. It looked like a canine, but this canine, well, it almost looked like a werewolf to me and my fiance. She's native, and she was saying that whatever that thing we were looking at, it looked right at me. I looked right at him or it. I couldn't tell if it was a him or not. I didn't get to see its private parts, but we looked at each other. I just got this faint feeling that something was really wrong. And it looked at me. And it let off this noise, and then it ran back into the forest. So I jumped back in my car, drove to my parents' cottage, and told my dad and mom everything that was happening. And my fiance, she's native, and she was talking about how there are these people called skinwalkers, and sometimes take form during the night. She said that they're cursed, that their bloodlines are cursed, and during the day they come back. And that's just a little story I had. It's always been a cottage conversation, and we always look to the side of the road now when we're driving there, and we haven't seen it since. This thing, I had my 110-pound Rottweiler in the back. Her name is Mia, and she didn't even give out a yelp. She just looked in the general direction while everyone in the car was just in awe as I got out, and I was actually very afraid. I deal with inmates all day who do heinous crimes, and I still couldn't believe my eyes. And what I saw, and the guys at work, well, they thought I was hallucinating. But to this day, I swear that this thing was there. Thanks. Signed, Thomas. Number 2. Dear Biker, this occurred approximately 3 years ago, and it still haunts me regularly to this day. I thought that perhaps I was alone in this encounter, but recently, I saw a story while surfing the web and thought this may have been a similar experience. My encounter happened in late June, in the middle of the night shortly after I'd fallen asleep. I had spent the day earlier gardening and had sprayed around the house to control mosquitoes that day, which I thought might have caused me to hallucinate this experience. I also lived alone at the time. Anyways, I went to bed and at some point I was awoken by the sound of children giggling and playing outside my house in the middle of the night. I live in a 1-story rancher, and I could hear them playing and tapping on the windows in front of the house. I peeked out the blinds to see these kids, and they appeared to be 3 Asian kids, all under the age of 10. I don't remember what the boy was wearing, but the girls were both in black dresses, like they had just come from some kind of event. They had ear-length jet black hair with bangs. I was in my pajamas, so I decided to ignore them and pretend they weren't there, hoping they would realize that they were obviously in the wrong place and just go away. Then they started knocking on the door, persistently. I figured they might have seen me and weren't going to go away, so I answered the door. The 3 kids were there, and an adult facing away on the sidewalk. They insisted that they lived at my house and that they needed to come in. I told them they had the wrong address. Then they asked if I knew some person and said they were coming to meet him, and again insisted that they be let in. Again, I replied that they must be confused, that it was just me here, and I don't know them, and they didn't belong in my house. There are many Asian families in my neighborhood, so I thought they might be arriving in town late to visit someone and just had gotten the wrong address. Then I shut the door. Again, there was a knock and I opened it, and this time it was the adult standing in front of me. There were also a few additional family members now gathered on the sidewalk of my house. He looked at me like a Japanese older man with a long mustache and goatee, and he wore sunglasses, even at this late hour at night, and a black suit. Again, he said that they lived there, and they were meeting someone else and insisted that I let them in because they had traveled a long way. At this point, something just clicked in my brain, and I stared back at the man and very firmly told him that I knew who he was and that he didn't belong there, and I went to shut the door. At the instant I said this man showed his true form, which was some kind of demon or a beast. He screamed or roared in my face, grabbed me by the neck and pinned me up against the wall, enough to knock the wind out of me. I wish I could give a better description of what it looked like, but the second that I saw it change, I closed my eyes and began to pray as hard as I could, and focus only on praying and blocking out this thing that had me pinned against the wall. It was the only thing I could do because I was sure it was going to kill me at that moment. Not sure what happened next, but I woke up in the morning in my bed. However, my neck was stiff, like I had whiplash for days, and my front door was left ajar. Every single night after this incident, I couldn't go to bed without putting a chair with a 20-pound weight on it in front of the door. I also had to push the recliner in front of the patio door. Luckily, I moved from that place later this year. I haven't had an encounter since this experience. The vivid experience was a one-time event. Before, I had had this classic, reoccurring sleep paralysis, with feelings of evil spirits being in the room and pressing on my chest, but never anything like what had happened that night. I have a feeling that maybe they had been scoping me out before actually visiting and making a move, but were confronted and rejected, and so have not come back. And I pray they never will. Signed, Anonymous. Number 3. Hello, sir. Years ago in the late 90s, I was on my way from the house, Texas Hill Country, to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, around 4 or 5 a.m., and I'd just come off a string of days at home, so I knew I wasn't tired. So I'm on one of those 2-lane, winding roads in the absolute middle of nowhere when I see something on the side of the road at the edge of my high beams. At first, I thought it was roadkill, as is usually the case. As I get closer, I see that it is roadkill, and someone or something is crouching over the deer carcass. I remember thinking that either this guy's taking the antlers as a trophy or he's sick. As I got closer, I could see this guy eating the deer. He's pulling chunks of meat from the stomach and bringing them up to his face. At that point, he stops mid-motion and looks up at me. Not at my truck, but at me. It stands up, and that's when I see that it's huge, brown, and covered in hair. This thing is standing on the tiny shoulder, looking at me. By this point, maybe 5 seconds have passed, and I'm about the point in the road where he's standing at. I didn't even think of stopping, In fact, I'm starting to lay on it and get the hell out of there. As I'm passing, it's looking at me. Again, and not at the truck. It's looking through the driver's side windshield, directly at me. He obviously has the intelligence to know that there's a driver in here and knows where I'm sitting. As I start to pass him, all I can see is its head above the hood of an old needle-nosed Pete. An old truck design where the hood goes straight out from the windshield, known for being tall and difficult to see around. This thing is a giant. I remember seeing what looked like human intelligence in its eyes. Just thinking about it still scares the hell out of me to this day. Thanks for reading. Signed, Jack. And there it is, all I have for you tonight. I look forward to seeing your thoughts and theories down in the comments, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a strange experience or an unexplained encounter that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description and, well, your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for riding with me tonight. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.